Hello everybody, today we are going to be looking at a Codelock system, a nice simple easy basic system that is very easy to implement. It's drag and drop, there's not much code in it, it all works nice and tidy, and the codes are independent of each other in every way, and the codes can be different lengths, and it will automatically know all you got to do is put in the code in the inspector here at the top on the script, and it will change everything it needs to inside to make sure that it's always working. As you can see, the codes open and close these doors that I've got just to represent the fact that it is working. I'm going to click on the console here, and as you can see, it's telling you that it's correct. If you input the wrong code, it will tell you that it is wrong. Of course, you could do something from there to maybe indicate that it was wrong. Whatever you want to do with it, really, it's up to you. But to get into what is currently here, I am going to come up to File at the top and create a new scene. I suggest you do the same, so we are starting in the same place. One thing I will do is I do have a Codelock and a door prefab, which I will drag in. Excuse me. And these are basically, well, both of them are cubes. The Codelock itself is just a cube. If you want to take the rotations and the scales here of it and apply it to a cube of your own, and then underneath it you want to do the same, I would say, with the scales and rotation of the children cubes. These have to be children of the Codelock to get the right kind of size, and just position them in place just as a representation so that we can see the code is in fact working. The only thing that has to be the same is that whatever button you want to correspond to a number has to be named that number. For example, I have 1 in the top left here. The next is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. That is the way I want my Codelock. You could rearrange this however you like. Just make sure that whatever button value, whatever value, you want that button to have, you have named it that value, as we will be using that later on to check the code. And the door is just an empty game object that is on the bottom left corner, so that when it rotates, it will rotate on that point. And there is another cube inside of there. As you can see, there are the scales, and it's just to basically make a placeholder type door, just so you can actually visually see that the code has been validated and approved and it works. And you can see also when it hasn't by the fact that the door does not move. So I suggest you quickly just knock them up. Don't make it anything flash, just make it quick and ready. It's just basically for the illustration purposes to show that the code works. But with them in, we will need a way to interact with the buttons, and we are going to do that by adding a script to the main camera. And I am going to call this the controller. It's going to be a new script, and it's going to be in C#. I will create and add this, and then open it up. And once we are open, I am going to start fleshing this out. And the way we're going to do it is with a ray check. And the ray check is going to just to check to see if we are in fact hitting a Codelock. I'll just start coding it out so you can see how that's going to go. But first, I'm going to put in the update a check to see if we are pressing a certain button. So I'm going to type in if we input.get mouse button, and the mouse button we are going to be getting down is 0, which is our left mouse button. If we are getting that, we are going to fire a ray to see to check the Codelock. So I'm going to call a function called check hit obj, and obviously with that done, we are going to need to create that function. We won't be needing start, so I will change our start into the check hit obj that we have called in update. And I will also cut this and put it below the update. And inside here is where we will be putting the code for the raycast. So in here, as I've just said, we're going to need a raycast. So we're going to create a raycast hit, and we're just going to call it hit. We are going to also need a ray, which I will just call ray. Don't know why I put space there. Let's put that back to make it a bit tidier. And the ray is going to be equal to camera.main .screen point to ray, and we are going to give that the input.mouse position. And we are going to use this in the if to make sure we are hitting what we want to hit. So we're going to type in if physics dot raycast, we are going to give it the ray we've just created. We are going to put out hit, and we are going to give it a range. I'm going to just quickly create an integer at the top here. I'm going to call this reach range, which will be how far the ray will go in the distance. I mean, basically, it's a way, if you imagine it's effectively an arm. If you imagine you're reaching out to touch something, if this is you're using this to represent the distance that you can reach. Since I have made that at the top, I'm just going to put at the bottom here at the end after the out reach range, so that it does know the range that we want to put in. You can just put any number you want in there, really. It doesn't really matter too much, but if you want control over that, that int is there for that reason. And in here, what we are going to want is we are going to want to see which code lock we are hitting, just in case there is multiple code locks in the scene. So to do that, we are going to need to get the code lock. So in the top, just where we have created the int, I am going to type in Codelock. This is a script we haven't created yet, but don't worry, we will be, and I'm going to call that Codelock. While this is not being created, it's not going to work, so I'm just going to quickly save this out, and I'm going to head back into Unity on our actual code lock. Not the buttons, the actual code lock itself. I'm going to add a component onto that, and I'm going to call this code lock. Nope, that was the tutorial one. Just code lock. Here we are, new script, create and add with that on. And I'm just going to open that up in Visual Studios so that we can change that as well. But we don't need to do that right now. We just needed that in so that we understand that this is in fact in here. But using this, we are going to use the code lock variable at the top here we've just created, and we are going to set it equal to the code lock that we have hit. So I'm going to type in code lock is equal to hit.transform dot game object dot get component in parent, which we are going to get the code lock. And that is going to make sure that whatever object we hit, we get the code lock of it. Of course, if the object that we're aiming for does not have a code lock on it, that would produce an error. So we are going to just check here if code lock is not equal to null. So if this object that the ray has hit does in fact have a code lock, we want our string value, which is going to be the name of the transform that we've hit. So that's going to be equal to hit dot transform dot name, and we are then going to pass that to the code lock. And to do that, we are going to say code lock dot set value, which is a method we haven't created in the code lock yet, but we will, and we are going to pass it the value, and we will save that out. That is all we're going to need for this controller script. So I will now head over into the Codelock script. And in here, as we've just seen in the end of the controller, we have a set value method. So we know we're going to be needing that to set the value, to check the value, all that kind of stuff. So in the Codelock, I am going to change our update to the set value method. So just where it updates here, I'm going to change this to set value. So we now have the method that we called in controller in our code lock, but we need to pass it a string. So we're going to tell it it wants a string, and the string is called value. And this is a value that will be equal to the name of the hit transform, as we've said here. It will be passed through as the value to this to set the actual value, which is why it was important, as we've seen before in the code lock, that the buttons are the name of the button is corresponding to the actual value you want it to have. But back into the code, I am going to start fleshing out this set value method. In fact, I'm just going to quickly go back in and just check to make sure there is no errors. There is code lock set value. That's because it is not public. Make sure this is a public method. So just before the void, just put a public set value. And in here we are going to do all of most of the heavy lifting for the actual the Codelocks functionality. To start this, we are going to need a way to know the when we're passing this value in, we're going to need to know a way of which value does this is this sitting. Where is this sitting in the code? Is this the second value we're passing? Is it the third or the fourth? Depends on the length of the code, but we are going to need an integer at the top so that we know that. And I am going to call this place in code. We don't need to give it a value. It's literally just a way for us to monitor where in the code this value is. So when we first call it, I am going to say place in code plus plus. So we are adding to place in code for every single time we pass a value to this. And we will now need to do a few checks to see if the value is firstly not too long, because if we want to give 5 values to a code that only has 4, obviously that doesn't make sense. We're going to want it to get to 4, and we're going to want it to empty itself so that the code has been input wrong and we can try it again. So to do that, we are going to say if place in code is equal to our, we will call this code length, is another int we're going to have to put at the top. So just above place in code, I'm going to put int code length. Code length. There we are, got there in the end. Don't have to give a value to that, but this is going to have the length of the code stored in it, so we'll know that once the place in code is equal to code length, we will do something. So just after there, we're going to type in code length, and inside of this if, we are going to want to check the code once it is equal, because once the place in code is equal to our code length, we will know that we've put the same amount of values in as what the length of the code is, so it's time to check it to see if it's right. So we will say check code, which will be a method that we haven't created yet, but we will quickly create now. The start method I will change to check code. And in the check code is where we will put the actual functionality for check the code, but we're not going to do that right now. It's just so that we know where we are going with this. We will also want to, once it is equal, we will want to set the code to be empty, and we will be using a string for this, and there isn't a string for this created yet. So back at the top, below the place in code, I'm going to create a public string, and it's going to be called code. And that is going to be equal to just a normal string with nothing in it. It doesn't need any values in, it's just an empty string. And we will use the code and another public string just below this. Public string attempted code, attempted code. And that doesn't need a value in it. We will use these two to, this will be our actual code, and this will be the attempted code that we are trying to fit in. So just down here at the bottom where we were in the set value, we are going to say attempted code is equal to a empty string. So if it is, once the code's been put in, whether it is right or wrong, our attempted code will be set back to nothing. And we will also need to change the place in code to be equal to 0, so that we will go back through the loop as long as this is not this requirement is not met. And the check code will obviously check to see if the code is correct. But before that, we also need to have a way to check. To add to the attempted code to make sure the value is correct. To do that, we are going to say if place in code is less than or equal to code length. We are going to want to say attempted code, which is a string we made at the top, is plus equals to the value that we are passing in from the name of the button which the controller is doing. So that will pass in once this hits its transform. Just say we hit the 4th button, the value will be 4, it will get passed through to here, and the attempted code will have the value added to it. So if 4 was the 3rd button we pressed, the 3rd value in the attempted code would be value. and this will do for validating whether or not the sorry, not validating, for building the code itself as it is a string. But with that done, we can start working out the flesh of the check code method. And to do that, we are going to say if attempted code is equal to our code, which means that the code that has been input is equal completely to the code. We will need to do something to the object in which the code is creating, as the code is controlling. Sorry, in this instance, it is going to be just a door, just to represent that it is working in my case, and I'm going to manipulate the door with an I enumerator. So just below it, I am going to create an I enumerator. I'm just going to call it open. This is just to represent that it does in fact manipulate the object, and inside of here, I am going to manipulate the door's transform. So back at the top, I am going to create a transform, a public transform, and I'm just going to call this to open, and I'm going to use that in the I enumerator to manipulate the door itself. So I'm just going to write in to open dot rotate, as I'm just going to rotate the door to represent it moving. It's going to be a new vector 3. I'm going to give it a value of 0, 90, and 0, and we are going to make sure that that is done in world space by typing in space dot world, so that we will be rotating it 90 on its Y in world space. I am then going to yield return new wait for seconds, and we are going to wait for 4 seconds, not 43, just 4 seconds, and then after that I'm just going to copy and paste this and put it just below the yield return, and instead of it being 90, I'm going to make it negative 90. And what that will do is it'll rotate the door on 90 degrees, wait 4 seconds, and then put it back to its original rotation, so that it will effectively close. But that's what's represented. Of course, I would say in here you will want to put something for whatever it is you're using it for, whether it be chests, doors, shutters, whatever it is. You'd want to put something different. This is just to represent that it is in fact being authorized by the code being correct. So with that done, we need to put in the check code at the top here. If it is correct, we are going to want to start that coroutine. So we're going to say start coroutine, and I am just going to give it the coroutine we've just made, which is open. So if the code is right, it will open the door. I'm also just going to put a little else down here. You could put an else if, but it's not really necessary. And in this else, I am just going to quickly put out a debug.log, and all it will say is that we will see a wrong code, and then close that out. That's just basically just so that we know once the code length has been reached, it will in fact notify us that the code has been put in wrong, and it will reset the code. There's one more thing to do in here as well before we leave. Just below the, just above the check code here, I'm just going to create a void start, and inside of here I am going to say code length is equal to our code dot length, so that whatever length we put in for the code length, the int will automatically assign itself to the correct length. I do believe that is everything in here that is required. So I'm going to head back into Unity, and I am going to clear this out. So as you can see, there is no errors. I'm going to click on the actual Codelock, and I am going to give it the transform to open, which is the door that I brought in from before. So I'm just going to put that in, plop that door on, and I also will need to give this a code. Just for example purposes, I'm just going to give it a 2-digit code of 15, and I'm going to press play, and I do believe it's going to move my camera. Yes, I need to move my camera over, so I'm going to just quickly pop into the scene, grab the camera, and shift him over to a better position so that we can see this working. Just give me one moment. Where are we? Are we too low there? Yep, up. There we are. That'll do for demonstration purposes. I'm going to press play, and inside here, as we can see on the code lock in the inspector, the code is 15. And the way I set up my buttons 1 is up here, as you can see. When I pressed 1, the attempted code was put in there. If I press 5, the door does in fact rotate and the code resets. This does know that its code is only 2 digits long, so if I now put in a wrong code, if I press this here, which is a 3, and this one here, which is a 6, that is 2 digits. It now knows it is the wrong code, and then it has reset it, and I can put in any code I want. If it's a wrong code, it will just forever keep telling me it's a wrong code, and it won't make any difference. The object will not open. Of course, the minute I press on the correct one, it will move the door. I'm just going to quickly duplicate this, the code lock, and duplicate the door, and I will move the second code lock over to the side just a little bit, and the other door I will move over to the side as well. I will take the new code lock and give it the new door so that it is working with that. And in here, I'm going to get this code and put this to a longer number. I'm just going to give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is a 5-digit code to open the other door. Just make sure it's inside the view. Yep, not exactly the prettiest thing, but it will show it working. I'm just going to quickly shift these doors over as well because I don't like the way they're sitting. Yeah, that'll do. I'm going to press play, and as we can see on the first code lock, the code is 15. On the second code lock, the code is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the second code lock. So if I type 15 into this one, as you can see, it is showing on that code lock, and it doesn't matter that the other code is set to that. It's not going to change this one. It makes no difference. If I go onto this code lock, which is the first one, and put in the old code, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of course, it doesn't work. It's not going to have it. So the codes are completely independent of each other, and it all works in that sense. I've just pressed the wrong one there though, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's because I'd already had a code left in. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you can see, that works, and then the 15 works there. This is very basic, of course. The game objects themselves, I would very much advise creating your own models, but it's just to show the functionality, and I do hope it was handy for anyone who's seen this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for your time and have a good day.